You know it wasn't easy. You know everything you faced, every distance, every silence, every doubt. You felt fear, felt that maybe it wouldn't work out, that perhaps it would be better to take another path. But for some reason, you never could truly let go. Because every time you tried to forget, something brought you back. A detail, a moment, a memory that insisted on staying. And now, after everything you feel that this wasn't in vain, that it wasn't just another love, that it wasn't fleeting. Something in you still believes, still hopes, still wants. Because this love challenged everything. It overcome barriers, resisted time, and crossed the difficult days. What happens now? You feel that something big is about to come, but are you ready for it? Are you ready to accept what you always knew deep down? You know what you feel. You might even try to ignore it, hide it, or disguise it, but the truth has never changed. It was never a matter of wanting or not wanting, because some things simply are. This love has always been there, even when you tried to run from it, even when pride spoke louder, even when fear tried to convince you that it was better to give up. But what about now? You feel that something big is about to happen. You sense that you're closer than ever to an answer. The question that really matters, though, isn't about what's going to happen, but rather what you're going to do with it. Will you keep pretending that it doesn't matter? Will you continue convincing yourself that you can live without it? Because the truth is that you've already tried. You tried to move on. You tried to convince yourself that it was just another story. You tried to leave it behind. And for a while, it even seemed like it was working. But then came that moment, that instant, when everything came rushing back. Hair, song, a phrase, a smell, a detail that no one else would notice, but for you it felt like a punch to the chest. Because it was about you two, about everything you lived through, about all that could still be. You can deny it to others, but you can't deny it to yourself. And the truth is, you never wanted it to end. What held you back were the doubts, the fears, the scars from what had already happened. But now everything is different, and you feel it. Because time has passed, but the intensity hasn't changed. Because even after everything, there's still something there, something strong enough to make you question whether it's worth trying one more time. And that question won't go away. You can ignore it, you can pretend it doesn't matter, you can even try to distract yourself with other things. But in the end, you always return to that point. You always return to that person. You always return to that love that, no matter how much you tried to bury it, has never stopped beating inside you. So now what? What do you do? Because time can take a lot of things, but it doesn't take away what is real. It can distance you, it can cool things down, it can even mess up the paths. But what is true finds a way to come back. It always comes back. And you know that. You know because you're feeling it now. Maybe it's time to stop running away, to stop deceiving yourself, to stop pretending that you can move on as if nothing happened, because something happened. And it changed everything. You didn't get here by chance. This story isn't over yet. And the only thing that really matters now is, what are you going to do about it? Because ignoring it is no longer an option. Pretending you don't feel anything doesn't work anymore. So are you going to keep waiting for time to fix everything? Or will you decide once and for all if this love deserves another chance? Time is passing. And deep down, you already know the answer. You've always known. You feel like you're reaching a point where it's no longer avoidable. Everything you tried to sweep under the rug has come back. Everything you tried to ignore has found you in the silence of the night, in the pause between breaths, in the exact moment you thought you had finally managed to forget. But forgetting was never an option, was it? You can look away. You can pretend you don't feel anything. You can tell yourself that everything is fine, that it's all behind you, that you've moved on. But inside, the truth keeps shouting. You know this was never just another story. You might say that time has solved everything, that distance erased what you had, that each of you has moved on, and that it no longer makes sense. But if that's true, why do you still feel this way? Why has this presence never truly faded? Why does this person still have such an impact on you, even from afar? Have you ever wondered if this connection was just a coincidence? If what happened between you was simply random? Because if it were, it would have ended by now. But it didn't. It endured through time, through bad choices, through unresolved goodbyes. It withstood pride, the words left unspoken, the promises hanging in the air. And now here you are, trying to understand why this continues to pull you back, or maybe pull you forward, because it could be that, couldn't it? Perhaps everything that happened was just a detour on the way, not the end. Maybe it was necessary to lose in order to understand the value. Maybe it was necessary to step back to see more clearly. Maybe all of this was needed so that now, in this very moment, you can finally see the truth without running from it. The truth is that you miss someone, not just the person, but what you were together. You miss the way you understood each other without needing an explanation. The security of knowing that no matter what happened, that love was still there, strong and unchanging. You miss the peace you found in that gaze, the comfort of that voice, the certainty that you could be yourself without fear. What scares you is not just the absence, but the possibility that maybe there is still a way back. Because if there is still a way, it means you have to make a decision, and deciding means letting go of fear. But has fear made you lose too much time? Has it stopped you from living what really matters? Has it kept you stuck in the past while life was giving you chances to start over? Time doesn't stop. It doesn't wait for you to be sure. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It simply goes on. And the question is, how much longer will you let it pass before admitting to yourself that this love has never stopped being yours? Maybe now is your last chance. Maybe this is the time to set pride aside and do what your heart has been asking for all along. Or will you wait to lose everything for good before realizing that you never should have let it go? And what if you're one step away from losing it all? What if this wait that you called time to think is actually just fear paralyzing you? Time won't hold this story in place forever. Time won't promise you anything. It will pass just as it always has. And if you do nothing, one day you'll look back and realize that what was yours has slipped away. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to see that person move on without you? But truly move on. Not just those failed attempts to forget, those phases where one tries to prove to the other that they are just fine alone. But a definitive moving on, where there's no turning back, where everything that could have been dissolves into what will never be. Because life won't wait for you to decide. It won't keep this story hanging in the air until you find the courage to admit that you never wanted it to end. If you continue playing this game of running away from what you feel, eventually the game will be over. Not because you chose for it to be, but because you let too much time slip away. And maybe you're comfortable with that idea now. Maybe you think that if it's meant to be, fate will find a way. But what if fate has already given all the chances it could? What if everything that needed to happen has already happened, and the rest is up to you now, because love isn't sustained only by what was. Love needs to be nourished, it needs to be cared for. And no matter how strong that feeling was, no matter how it stood the test of so many things, it's not invincible. It can fade, it can grow tired of waiting. It can be replaced by something that, even if it's not the same, is enough to move forward. And will you let that happen? Will you simply watch as something that still beats within you fades away in another's heart? If the answer is no, then what are you still waiting for? Time is testing you. It wants to know how far you will go with this indecision, but eventually it will stop asking. And when that happens, it will be too late to try to go back. Because maybe, by the time you finally decide that you want it, the other person will have already decided that they no longer need you. And then it will be too late. And when it's too late, have you thought about that? Have you imagined what it would be like to realize that while you hesitated, while you fed your doubts, while you waited for a sign that would never come, life simply moved on? Because she moves on. People move on. And love, no matter how strong, can also tire out. It too needs answers. It too needs to be chosen. What if when you finally decide to act there's no one left waiting? What if that person who loved you so intensely has found someone who appreciates what you took too long to see? What if that gaze that once belonged to you no longer recognizes you the same way? Can you bear that weight? Can you handle seeing someone else in the space that used to be yours? Can you cope with knowing you could have done something and didn't? Can you carry the regret of having waited too long? Because there are no guarantees. You might think you know what you're doing. You might believe that you still have time. But do you? Is the other person's heart still open to you? While you're questioning, is the other one already giving up? People don't give up all at once. They give up little by little, with every silence, with every absence. Each time they wait and don't find anything, they get used to the absence, learn to move on, until one day, without realizing it, they no longer feel the need to return. And you? Are you going to wait for that to happen? Are you going to wait until it's too late to realize that there's nothing left to reclaim? That all that love that seemed unshakable has become just a memory? Because time is cruel to those who wait too long. It takes opportunities away, it closes doors, it turns stories that could have been beautiful into mere unfinished chapters. And you are on the brink of that time. You're at the edge of the decision that could change everything. But you need to understand one thing. There's no new beginning without action. There's no second chance without courage. There's no love that can endure if it's not nurtured. And if you still feel, if you still want, if you still see a future in this, then don't wait any longer. Because the next step isn't up to time, it's not up to fate, it's not up to the other person. The next step is yours. And the only question that really matters now is, are you going to take that step? Or are you going to spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been if you had tried? You feel like you're at a crossroads, between taking action and letting it go. Between facing what you feel or continuing to pretend it doesn't matter anymore. But what if, deep down, all you wanted was a sign? Some confirmation that it's worth trying. The truth is that the signs have always been there. You just chose to ignore them. You realized there was still a place for you in this person's life. You noticed the small gestures, the responses that still came with a feeling that never faded. But instead of doing something, you convinced yourself that maybe it was better to leave it alone. But love isn't something you can simply turn off. It doesn't work that way. You can distract your mind, you can try to fill your days with other things, you can even convince yourself for a moment that you've moved on. But when everything goes quiet, when night falls, when the world slows down, there it is again, pulling you back into everything that could still be. And maybe what scares you the most isn't love itself, but the responsibility of dealing with it. Because feeling is easy. The hard part is admitting that for something to happen, you need to move. You need to break the silence. You need to let go of the fear. The fear of not being reciprocated in the same way. The fear that time has changed things. The fear that that space which was once yours is no longer available. But what if I told you that the real mistake isn't trying and failing, but never trying at all? Because if there's a chance, no matter how small, wouldn't you want to find out? Don't you want to look into that person's eyes and without any half measures ask what needs to be asked? Don't you want to, for the first time, act without expecting guarantees? Because guarantees don't exist. What exists is a now. And in this now, you still feel. You still want. You still think. What are you going to do about this? Time might be running out, and the truth is if you keep waiting, it might be too late by the time you finally decide to act. The space that once was yours may already be occupied. When you finally look, there might be nothing left on the other side. Can you handle that? Can you deal with the thought that if you had done something sooner, the story could have been different? Can you live with that doubt for the rest of your life? Because regret doesn't come at the moment you lose. It comes later. It comes when you realize that what's gone isn't coming back. It comes when you see that person happy somewhere else, with someone who had the courage you didn't. And at that moment, nothing else will matter. So, if you still feel something, do something. Now. Because it may be too late later, and there's no pain worse than knowing you had a chance and wasted it. Now, I want to know, have you ever lived through something like this? Have you ever let love slip away out of fear, pride, or hesitation? Share your story in the comments. I want to hear it. If this message resonated with you, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Maybe this is the confirmation someone needs to take courage before it's too late.